I'm your State Treasurer, Colleen Davis, with another edition of Treasury Talks, where we speak with thought leaders across Delaware about some of the pertinent things that are going on right now, especially with those who intersect with the work of my office inside the Treasury. Today, we have with us State Representative Krista Griffith. Representative Griffith is wrapping up her first term. She was first elected back in 2018. And I've had the pleasure of working with you on several initiatives and have been truly impressed with your level of commitment and activity and attention to serving your constituents. You know, fighting for those that are most vulnerable as well as underrepresented in our communities. What would you say led you to a life of public service?
What led me to public service? It's just like many people, it was a circuitous kind of route, like where I worked in a variety of different fields that have, really led me to being a state representative in the 12th District of Delaware. So I was honored to clerk in Delaware for Justice Vaughn, who was then president judge of the Delaware Superior Court just after law school. And then following that experience, I worked at the Delaware Department of Justice under Attorney General Biden for his entire 8 years as Attorney General, and also Attorney General Den for a portion of his tenure as our Attorney General. So I had a wonderful experience with the Department of Justice. I represented a number of state agencies, including the Children's Department. I also prosecuted child abuse and domestic violence cases. And really the first, I would say, connection that I developed with those in our state who are most vulnerable was when I was appointed by Attorney General Biden to lead the Senior Protection Initiative, which really sought to prosecute crimes against those who are older than 62 and also vulnerable adults. So I learned a great deal about the needs of those in our state who are either seniors or in need of services. I love my job. I love my career. And I would have probably continued doing that, but for a personal experience that happened to me with my own child, Nate, who is now healthy, happy 6-year-old kindergartner. But unfortunately, when he was 1, Nate was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. And at that time, I was at the Delaware Department of Justice. So because of that, made the decision to leave and be at his bedside at Nemours Hospital, where he spent 6 months undergoing very intense chemotherapy treatments. Nate also has Down syndrome, so and he had open heart surgery after a few weeks of age and of his life. So he has, in his first 2 years, really experienced horrific medical conditions in addition to the developmental disability that he has.
It's really phenomenal, really, really wonderful that that you were able to do that, and I can't imagine the strength to have gone through what you've gone through with your own family, but also to advocate for folks, whether it be children or whether it be the elderly. You sort of start to uncover a side of the world that can be really tough to experience, and so it's really amazing that you were encouraged to run, and I'm grateful that you have, and that you're in the place where you are. It's really an inspiration. You have been an important champion in sponsoring and supporting the legislation that supports ABLE accounts. And, one of the things I think about is how do we continue to advance these issues through legislation, whether it be a variety of tax legislation or awareness of the accounts within the community. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. And, Treasurer Davis, I think you should be very proud. I don't know what the current numbers are, but I believe you have really dramatically increased the number of those participating in the ABLE account program, and you should be very proud of that. So as a mom, I actually attended the initial bill signing under Governor Markell's administration when the ABLE accounts were created here in Delaware. And then I, as a mom again, I think it was the summer of 18, those accounts were updated and modified by Governor Carney. So, we've had the ABLE program for a number of years, but getting folks to participate in that has probably been a little bit of a struggle, I think, and you keyed right on it, which is the awareness of these accounts. A lot of children and adults who have disabilities really want to work. They really want to put the skills to use that they've learned in their public, through education, through their life experiences, but yet they're faced with a situation where if they did work and if they did earn income, they could potentially lose valuable government services that help them get by. And so families and individuals with disabilities are left with this quandary of what do I do? I want to work, but if I work, I won't make enough to be able to pay for my medical expenses or those services that I need. What can I do? And so the ABLE program was created so that those folks who want to be able to save money can do so, but yet not lose important government services. So it's a limited amount of money that can be put away every year. But those funds that allow that individual with a disability be able to buy a bed or shop for clothes or, take their mom or dad out for dinner or a friend or go to the movies, those kind of life, those necessities of life and fulfillment that you or I enjoy, that these ABLE accounts really help those folks do that by giving them an opportunity to save money without being penalized through services. So, so we have the program, which is great, but there's still some things that we can do to fine tune it and make it more and give people more of an incentive to save and open up these accounts. And so one piece of legislation that I sponsored this year was allowing individuals who contribute up to $5,000 to an ABLE account be provided an income tax deduction of that amount, so that they, as an incentive to be able to put away up to $5,000 a year. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, the legislation did not make it out of committee. And so that bill did not get passed, but the spirit of it remains, and I'm sure it will return when we are back.
You mentioned our numbers, and it's an exciting sort of milestone to hit. We're up to 110 open accounts now, and I truly would love to see every family that has the ability to participate in ABLE accounts to do so, because they're a real game changer for a lot of folks. And so if we can also make an additional tax deduction, I think that it can go a really long way for folks, and I would love to see that. One of the other areas that you and I overlap in is in the digital government space. You serve on as chair of the House Telecommunications, Internet, and Technology Committee, really tackling some of the greatest challenges right now that we're facing on connectivity and access for Delawareans. Coordinating pretty closely with with the governor's GEAR committee as well as DTI. And my office has also been working with GEAR on, for quite some time on some of the ways in which we can make government more accessible, more transparent, and more efficient. What is your take on how government can sort of better serve Delawareans and maybe specifically your constituents?
That's a great question. I really think there's two issues with this topic of technology and government. I mean, one is making sure that everyone has access. And the second is making sure that the services that the state of Delaware is delivering, that we are delivering these services in a technologically friendly way. Because people are expecting both of those things and should expect both of those things from their government. Number one, we have had, quote unquote, deserts of connectivity for folks. And I think one fortunate aspect of the federal funding that came to Delaware as a result of the CARES Act is I believe many of those gaps were closed, so that we have now internet connectivity in areas of the state of Delaware where that did not exist before. It's important to equalize the ability of everyone to access services, particularly during the past 6 months where we have really needed that internet for our livelihoods, to order our groceries, to talk to our doctors, to do any number of things. And so we really need, in order to best represent all citizens of Delaware, regardless of income or where they live, we really need to make sure that there's connectivity throughout this state. So I think that we have made some progress on that since I've been elected, thanks to the hard work of DTI and some federal money that has helped get that accomplished. But the second thing does really relate to our role in government as service providers. We have most everyone is now accustomed to doing so many things with the click of a button on an app, or it's not phone calls anymore. It's not filling out paper forms. It's actually just being able to take care of business through technology. And Delaware's doing great in a lot of areas. Like there is ways to get park passes online. There's ways to do different things, but we need to really do a better job of coordinating how Delaware is able to serve its customers really through technology. So, and it's complicated. I mean, it's not easy. There are a number of factors that are different than a private industry. You have to make sure that it's, number one, that the information is secure. I mean, our individual security has to be first and foremost, because this is very sensitive information. But you still should be able to let someone file for unemployment, or enter their tax, enter their tax information, or buy a hunting license, or do any number of activities through, basically 1, 2, 3 type step process. So I'm really excited and hopeful that in the next 2 years, we can make some great strides in improving citizens' access to their government via technology. I think, again, another lesson from this pandemic is our how tied we are to our devices now, and expecting that we're able to get work accomplished and get things done.
I couldn't agree more. I think that especially now more than ever, we really rely on access to good bandwidth, to strong bandwidth. And you kind of touched on it. One thing the way that we thought about access and accessing government, it was not always online, because online seemed sort of a convenience but not a priority. And I think that when you touch on getting your groceries or seeing your physician, it's about being able to access the necessary and not so much just a convenience. And when people are accessing those services, they want to be able to do it securely. And, it sort of all goes back to being a champion for those that do not have the means to do many of these things for themselves. And so what else can we do as public servants to continue to advocate for Delawareans?
When I started this journey, I went out thinking that I knew what the issues were. For me personally, it was healthcare, helping those who are underrepresented, or those who have disabilities, and also some other passion projects or ideas that I have. But when I went door to door talking to the constituents of Delaware, some of those things were similar to what they wanted, but there were also new ideas, new issues that I wasn't quite familiar with. So I think, and I came up to speed with them, surely, by listening to the personal experiences of of my constituents. And I think we have to always continue to do that, always continue to really have direct interaction with those that we serve, because the ideas that we think are important might be, but there also are other ones that maybe we're not hearing and need to focus on. So I think particularly through this pandemic, increased access to technology and to assistance from the government. When people are facing an immediate loss of their job, needing information on COVID, where to get tested, et cetera, really having to go through so many different levels and layers makes life even more challenging. So, I think it's just maintaining that connection that we have to our constituents, listening to them and trying to help their experience with government. But, there's always going to be a certain number of people who don't want to use technology to have government services. So, we also need to make sure that we're still having that face-to-face personal connection as best as we can, even during a pandemic, so that people feel like they're connecting to those that serve them and represent them.
I would just say, to sort of close us out, that certainly in uncertain times such as these, I am so grateful that we have folks like you assisting sort of behind the scenes, helping to get us all through this. So thanks again for your time and for all the work that you do.